My dear friend Glenn Kirschner, welcome back to Mea Culpa. Could not be more excited to have you in these times of chaos and trouble. As you know, the hour goes by just way too fast, so I got to just jump right into it.
Go ahead,
You're
Mike.
You're a DC guy.
Yeah.
When the federal government moves to federalize DC police, what legal authority are they invoking? And could this be seen as, let's just say, a direct attempt to bypass Mayor Bowser's local control?
For anybody scoring at home, Michael, the law they are invoking is DC Code 1, Section 207.40, Emergency Control of Police. Does that law entitle Donald Trump to do what he did? No, it does not, but it doesn't matter. He did it anyway. But let me break down for the viewers and translate from legalese to English what the law provides. The law provides that if there are special emergency circumstances that require the federal government, the president, to take services from the local DC city cops, the Metropolitan Police Department, MPD, and use them for a federal purpose, then he can ask the mayor, and the mayor shall provide the resources, the law enforcement personnel that the president deems necessary, and that can only last 30 days. What the law doesn't say, Michael, and you can read this statute forward and backward, you're not going to find anything that says a president can seize control of the police department. That's not what it says. There is no special emergency. This is not taking law enforcement from the city for a, quote, federal purpose. You know what that would have looked like? On January 6th, there was a federal purpose to try to take local law enforcement and protect the lives of the people at the U.S. Capitol. There was also a reason on January 6th to activate the D.C. National Guard and direct them to protect the lives of the people at the Capitol. But Donald Trump did none of that. Instead, this is a dictatorial power grab that is not supported in the law. Donald Trump said, and I'm going to extend it beyond the 30 days that's in this statute. Well, good luck with that sport, because you need a joint resolution to be passed into law. We'll see if that happens. But no, this is not lawful, but that's an academic question.
Well, he also believes that he's going to get the congressional approval for it. Somewhere that the way they're speaking as if that they already know the numbers, that Mike Johnson already did the homework, and that they will, because of the majority that exists in the House of Representatives, that they will be successful in getting this thing passed. But I do want to ask you this, because historically, I want to give you just a historical analysis. You gave January 6th, but I certainly remember from my readings when federal forces overrode local law enforcement, like in the 1960s, the civil rights era. What lessons should we be drawing from those days for today's political climate?
Well, one of the lessons that I think we may have failed to learn is that we need to stand up en masse to an aspiring dictator and his corrupt regime. We have to do it peacefully. Civil disobedience, good trouble, as John Lewis said, is really all we have left. Because let's face it, no one person, no one prosecutor, no one judge, no one politician will save us. Listen, if the Democrats could have saved us from Donald Trump's insatiable appetite for to be a dictator, they would have saved us already. They can't. So, we are the ones who have to save us, and we have to do it by getting out in numbers that send the message. We're not going to let you destroy our democracy and rule over the ashes as a dictator. And let me add one thing that I neglected to say, because I just wrote a piece for The Contrarian. And one of the things that just is obscene, it's depraved, is that when Donald Trump unlawfully seized control of the Metropolitan Police Department, do you know he is now in charge of an agency that contains the victims of his January 6th crimes? police officers who had the hell beat out of them on January 6th are still with the Metropolitan Police Department. Donald Trump is now in charge of their agency, in charge of them, and he pardoned the people who beat the hell out of the officers that he now is in charge of. That is depraved.
Well, I mean, everything that Trump does causes some form of chaos. It certainly creates, I don't know, the news cycle. He controls the entire news cycle. But I actually heard one person turning around and saying that the federalizing of the DC police during these politically sensitive events, like, these, I don't know, Trump events that they're having out there or investigations could constitute an abuse of power, or even at some crazier level violate the Insurrection Act. Did you hear that same scenario?
I didn't hear the Insurrection Act piece. It's undoubtedly an abuse of power because he did it without lawful authority. So, but this man abuses his power every day. When he's not on the golf course, he's sitting in the Oval Office signing unlawful and unconstitutional executive orders, one after another after another. Executive orders that judges, including Ronald Reagan appointed judges, have said are blatantly unconstitutional. So abusing power is, basically the definition of the Trump presidency.
But then, sadly, while the lower court may rule, and it could be a Reagan judge appointee, they managed to, during the appellate process, overturn it. And if it's not overturned at the appellate process, they take it to the Supreme Court, where he has that group completely stacked in his favor. As far as I'm concerned, I know that this is the problem with us Democrats. We keep talking about how we're winning, how the courts are holding steady and tight, and that they are our last line of defense for the total abdication of the tripartite system of government. But none of that shit is true, by the way. If you take a look at the various cases, and yeah, there are some wins, but the real wins are really coming on behalf of this administration. And we're all scratching our head and we're saying, how? I mean, a first-year law student, somebody that never went to law school, understands, if you've even read part of the Constitution, that these are unlawful acts, that this is an abuse of power.
Yeah, and Donald Trump has 6 radical right-wing Supreme Court justices who seem forever willing to let him expand and consolidate his power, notwithstanding the express language of the Constitution. And really, one of the most egregious Supreme Court rulings, which I hope someday goes the way of Dred Scott and Korematsu and Plessy versus Ferguson, is Trump versus the United States. I actually thought that caption on that case said it all. Trump versus the United States. Lincoln envisioned the government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and Donald Trump is trying to create a government against the people. Trump versus the United States. But look, Michael, the Supreme Court said that a president can commit all of the crimes he wants in violation of our federal laws, victimize the American people, and he has complete presidential immunity for core constitutional functions. And, one of our preeminent constitutional law scholars, Yale professor Akil Reed Amar, said what the Supreme Court did in that opinion is they ruled that the Constitution is unconstitutional. Wow. Michael, where do we go with that? We don't get to appeal a bad ruling by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that just wasn't a bad ruling. I mean, that was that. I mean, there's only one way to describe it. It's a dog shit ruling that actually guts all of our rights and guts the Constitution. Let me ask you this question, though. How do you think that these federalizing of the DC police, how do you think that this conflicts, these conflicts that are no doubt are going to take place will occur between local and federal authorities? How do you think that will ultimately play out?
Well, it's interesting. So, because I was a prosecutor in D.C. for nearly a quarter of a century, I worked closely with the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. Those are the
Hmm.
local city cops. And I worked closely with the FBI agents at the Washington field office. Those are the FBI agents who are assigned to work criminal cases in D.C. That's separate and apart from the Hoover Building, FBI headquarters. And listen, they worked well together, but, MPD dealt with local crime and the feds, the FBI, dealt with federal crime. So, what kind of things are the FBI special agents investigating right now? They're investigating interstate kidnapping. They're investigating white collar fraud and nationwide criminal fraud schemes.
Yeah,
They're
drug
investigating
distribution, shit
they're
like that.
investigating terrorism. They're investigating child sex trafficking. And what has Donald Trump done? He said, I'm taking 120. I don't know what percentage of the FBI agents assigned to the Washington field office that represents, but it's a lot. 120 of them out of those investigations that I just described, I'm going to put them on the street as patrol officers, as if they were, MPD street patrol officers. Now, Michael, that will result in multiple things, and they're all bad. One, it actually takes a certain amount of experience and expertise to patrol the streets well, lawfully, and constitutionally. Take it from somebody who prosecuted the arrests made by patrol officers for decades in D.C. You say a couple of the wrong words or you neglect to say a couple of the things you should have said during the course of a stop, of an arrest, of a custodial interrogation. Guess what? You've now squirreled the prosecution, and I can't even hold those folk accountable. Not that the FBI agents aren't smart, accomplished law enforcement professionals, but they're not street cops.
Right.
So they shouldn't be taken away from their federal assignments, put on the streets. You're endangering everybody, and you're now co-mingling the federal agents' work with the MPD officers' work. It's a recipe for disaster. He's actually endangering the people of Washington, D.C., as much as he is endangering the officers that he's having do things that they're not equipped or experienced or trained to do. But that's the goal. He wants to demoralize the FBI, drive agents out, because you think you're gonna want to go from working your terrorism investigation to being a patrol cop on the streets of D.C. Are you going to leave the FBI for greener pastures? Isn't that perhaps what Donald Trump wants? Get rid of all the good agents, get rid of all the good DOJ attorneys, get rid of all the good MPD officers and detectives. And what do you got left? A Gestapo who are beholden to Donald Trump. Isn't that part of the goal here?
Well, all I know is anytime I've ever had to deal with our CPOP guy, our community police officer on patrol, the guy knows the area better than anybody I've ever met. In fact, he knows all the people. I suspect it's the same exact thing there in D.C. And you're right, Glenn. They're putting everybody into harm's way over what? Big balls getting allegedly carjacked or getting smacked around. Maybe he mouthed off to the wrong person. Shit happens all the time, whether it's here in New York, DC, New Jersey, Staten Island, Brooklyn. It happens everywhere. You say the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time. Okay, a fight breaks out, but you don't move in the entire, FBI, and these federal agents to take over a police force. It's crazy. I did want to then turn around and ask you something, because we're going to find out some information, obviously, about the Trump-Putin meeting. And we know that, Trump is going to be meeting privately with Putin. It's believed it's going to be very similar to like what happened in Helsinki, where it's Trump, Putin, and Putin's interpreter, even though Putin speaks perfect English, by the way. It's just going to be, at best, the three of them. No advisors, no staff present. What are the legal risks such a private encounter pose regarding, I don't know, once again, classified intelligence or national security protocols? Or how about the ultimate future of Ukraine?
Who knows what Donald Trump will give away. I have never seen him be an effective negotiator. I've never seen him strike a deal that was truly in the interests of the United States. Um, so, and the other thing that concerns me is that this is happening on U.S. soil. This is happening in Alaska with the International Criminal Court having issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin for war crimes. And yet, I don't know that I've heard a lot of people talk about, we are welcoming this person who is wanted. Now, we're not subject to the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. I get it. That was George W's doing there. But, it's pretty freaking offensive to have a wanted war criminal just hanging around up in Alaska meeting with Donald Trump. I served in Alaska for more than 3 years in the Army. It's a beautiful part of the country, but who knows? Maybe Donald Trump will just give it away to Putin. That's obviously a joke, or well, I hope it's a joke, but who knows how much the American people will lose when Donald Trump is behind closed doors with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, I mean, it's really crazy. Nobody knows what intelligence information about anything, whether it could be about troops, it could be cyber, it could be nuclear, it could be Ukraine. We have no idea because there's absolutely no oversight. Let me ask you a question. You think that this is or could be treated as, I don't know, negligence or criminal misconduct?
What, meeting with Putin?
Well, in terms of what information he ends up providing. I mean, the president just can't go ahead and provide, top secret information, and there's just nobody there. Right. We will never know. That's the worst part.
But what do we know? We know how the last meeting with Putin went. Michael, we saw it with our own eyes. Donald Trump came out of that meeting looking like a whipped dog, and Putin came out looking like he just won the lottery.
Do you ever stand in front of a mirror midsummer, wondering when your face started looking like a used gym towel and your energy vanished? I don't kind of like classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, been there. So let me save you from your next dumb cleanse or your crash diet. This is called Prolon, and it's the only 5-day fasting mimicking program that actually delivers. There's no starving, there's no shady powders, no praying to the kale gods, just real plant-based meals, soups, snacks, teas, all designed to keep you in a fasting state while you're still eating. What it does, it tricks your body into burning fat, repairing cells, and basically turning back the clock without needing a time machine or Botox. And now there's Prolon Next Gen, 100% organic, better taste, and ready to eat. Developed by top scientists at USC's Longevity Institute and backed by legit research. I mean, it literally triggers autophagy, a Nobel Prize-winning cellular cleanup process. So yeah, your cells go through a spa day while you sip soup. So look, when I need a reset, and I mean really need one, Prolon's the only thing that works. It's convenient, it's backed by science, and you know what? It doesn't make you hate life. So right now, Mea Culpa listeners, you're going to get 15% off site-wide plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to Prolon's 5-day nutrition program. So go right now to prolonlife.com/Mea Culpa. That's Prolon, PROLONLIFE.com/Mea Culpa to get your discount and your gift. Look good, feel better, and tell your metabolism to wake the hell up.
Right?
Yeah.
And what we know is that it's hard to fathom that he actually said this. The president of the United States said, well, yeah, my intelligence community told me that Russia, cheated, tried to interfere in the election. But you know what? Vladimir Putin said that Russia didn't. And you know what? I don't see why he would have.
But he said, but hold on, Glenn, to be fair, Vladimir Putin, according to Trump, said it very strongly.
Very strongly. Very strongly. So I guess a strong lie from Putin takes precedence over the U.S. intelligence community in the mind of Donald Trump. Now, with Tulsi Gabbard, who the heck knows where that plays out today. But what we can infer from that last meeting, which was really one of the low points in America's history, when Donald Trump emerged from that room and said what he said, what we can infer is that things are not going to go any better for America in the Alaska meeting between Putin and Trump.
Well, let me ask you this, because Zelensky did something I thought was incredibly bright. He went ahead and they had a meeting, Berlin, and he called on the Western democracies to continue to support Ukraine.
And it feels like the support of Ukraine from other nations has increased and solidified. You know, other nations are more determined now that we, America, can no longer be counted on to support our allies. Other nations are stepping up, and that's a good thing for Ukraine, but it's just horrific and terribly sad for the United States. I mean, we really, I don't think, can any longer be viewed as a world leader or a superpower, particularly when we have travel advisories being issued by other countries saying, listen, given the civil rights abuses in the United States, we're advising you against traveling to America. This is where we are now in the world pecking order.
So then tell me, how is it possible that in the Oval Office, in front of a gaggle of reporters, cameras going, journalists yelling out, trying to get their question to the president, they ask a question about whether or not the United States is going to continue. And this, of course, is based on a comment that Trump made to the press, where he then goes about and he continues this inaccurate, informational, what we'll call warfare, claiming that the United States has paid out over $380 billion in protecting Ukraine, whereas all of these other Western democracies, the EU and so on, have only paid about $125 billion. Now, all you need to do is to look up the information, and what you'll find out is that Trump has reversed the numbers. It's actually the other way around. We at the United States have provided $125 billion worth of support, but the Western democracies, the EU and so on, have all put in over 360 or 380 billion. How come nobody calls them out on an absolute misstatement like that?
Fact checking seems to be a thing of the past. Now, in fairness, Trump and those around Trump are trying to, handpick the folks who will be allowed in these press events and be allowed to ask him questions. But the reality is, one of the reasons, Michael, I left mainstream media to be 100% independent all the time is because mainstream media seems forever willing to make their editorial decisions by how many viewers it might attract, which translates into how many advertiser dollars they will earn. When I saw the recent meeting between the UK Prime Minister and Trump, and cable media, cable news gave him an hour of uninterrupted airtime to spew his nonsense into the public square, poisoning the minds of the people who are gullible enough to believe anything he says. I said to myself, mainstream media, corporate media, legacy media, because frankly, I think independent media is now mainstream media. So corporate media seems unable or unwilling to learn its lesson. And that's probably why cable news is no longer thriving, because that's not journalism. I was a journalism major, I was mentored by a master, Clark Mollenhoff, multiple Pulitzer Prize winner from the Des Moines Register. I learned at the knee of the master. And what he never taught me was that, fair, balanced, responsible reporting involves reporting the truth and then balancing it out by reporting lies. That's no kind of journalism, but that seems to be where we are in corporate media these days.
You know what's amazing? It's why Mea Culpa right here Do you know how many downloads since I first started this? I started this because I was on home confinement and I wanted my voice to reach further than the front door of my apartment. 500 million downloads so far. All right. Midas Touch Network, who was with me literally since day number one, now literally the number one platform, outdoing the MSNBCs, outdoing CNN, outdoing Fox and Joe Rogan. You're not wrong. Independent media is the only place to go. I can't believe it, to get unbiased reporting.
It's so important, and it's resonating with people. Let me give you a quick example of what I found so gratifying about now being 100% independent. I think it was the No Kings Day rally. And as soon as I got done speaking at our local rally, I jumped on Substack with Joy Reid, Jim Acosta, and Don Lemon. And I got to talk to people around the country who were signing on to their platforms because they're all independent media now, right? Having left cable news. And I got to tell these folks, listen, let me tell you what to do if the police apply force to you at the protest that you are at right now. Because I screened those cases. I screened protester lockups in the basement of the courthouse at the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. And I told people the do's and don'ts, how they can best position themselves, how they can first and foremost commit no crime, do not resist, do not assault a police officer. And then I talked them through the process that I engaged in for years of making a charging decision. Do I charge a protester or do I decline to charge a protester? Let me tell you, I would say 90% of the protest lockups we don't charge for a whole host of reasons because we can't prove crimes beyond a reasonable doubt, first and foremost. But the power of independent journalism at that moment, that I could talk to people, giving them practical advice that they could use while they were at protests, was for me just super gratifying.
Well, here's the only problem when it comes to that, because I do every now and then a show with Jim Acosta on Mondays. I too have a very nice sized Substack audience. I have an amazing group of followers that are always engaged. Every time I go on, they come right in. I mean, I'm more than 50% of the people who are part of my 63,000 plus subscribers, which, by the way, it's all for free, as you know. They read my Substacks every single day. It's an amazing number. If you start putting it all together, of course, hoping to grow it, but independent journalism is really the way to go. But here's something that I read about and I wrote about actually in my Substack. Trump's favorability, while we keep talking about, because we keep talking, my point that I was making, we're talking to ourselves. Like, it's Jim Acosta's 150, 200,000 people. My 60,000 are probably all part of his same Substack community. We're not expanding outside of the reach of those that are already of like mind. And you know how you know that? There was a bunch of polls came out showing that Trump is maintaining favorable numbers in 27 states in this country. 27, with, I think, Wyoming had the highest favorability for Trump on how he's handling not just the United States, the economy, but international affairs. Wyoming at 63%, Texas at 53%. I mean, imagine that. And yeah, I know, New York Times has him -8, Pew has him at -5.2, whatever. My question I want to ask you is, what does this suggest about the legal and the political challenges of holding a president accountable when this massive portion of our country remain loyal, not to the Constitution, not to reality, but to one man's ego?
Political accountability and legal accountability are obviously two very different things. And first of all, I think there are some people who are just flat out cult members, and no matter what Donald Trump says and no matter what Donald Trump does, they will support him. They will cheer him on. I've jokingly said there's probably a hardcore of Donald Trump's cult members who, if he said, you know what, to make America great again, I need to deport you all, my supporters, they would say, genius, what plane do I get on? I mean, cults resonate with some people for a reason, right? People drank the Kool-Aid when it came to Reverend Jim Jones. Cults resonate and grab hold of people for a reason. Now there are lots of different reasons that make a human being susceptible to cult leaders, but Donald Trump is a cult leader. Then there are some who say, listen, by any means necessary, I want to get rid of all the brown people. I want to get rid of all the immigrants. I don't care about constitutional niceties. If you got to chase down people for whom you have no constitutional probable cause to stop or seize, I don't care. Just get them the hell out. Put them in prison in El Salvador. What do I care? Then there are people who actually believe tariffs somehow make us rich, make the American people rich. So I think it's a combination of things when it comes to political accountability. And, Democrats need, listen, I'm glad Gavin Newsom is now trolling Trump, and not only trolling Trump, but also saying Texas is going to gerrymander. You ain't seen nothing yet. I don't believe in an eye for an eye because we all go blind. I'm a rule of law guy. I don't want to start violating the rule of law just because the Republicans are violating the rule of law. But Michael, we got to do something different. And I think Gavin Newsom recognizes that. When it comes to legal accountability, look, we tried last time. The Supreme Court said, no, you're not going to confine our man. We're going to make up out of whole cloth presidential immunity. In fact, let me tell our viewers, the Constitution says the President of the United States must take care that the laws of the nation be faithfully executed. That's the exact opposite of the Supreme Court saying a president can violate the rules, the laws of our nation with immunity. They contradicted the express language of the Constitution. So will legal accountability ever come for Donald Trump? I don't know. But if the White House changes hands during the next presidential election, we're going to need to go on a cleanup mission, and we're going to need to hold or try to hold wrongdoers accountable. But it ain't going to be easy.
But there was an article that came out the other day. I actually did a Substack on it a couple of days ago, whereby it turns around and it goes state by state in the country. They actually do the math. And this is the problem with Democrats. This is our problem. We don't actually do the math. We think that just by saying or shitting on Trump, that's going to bring people back. He's doing a terrible job. Look what's going on here. He lied about Russia, Ukraine. He lied about Israel, Hamas. He's lying about India, Pakistan. He's lying about this and that. That's all of a sudden going to get, these people to wake up, stop being apathetic, and rejoin the Democratic Party. What we're not doing is going into the communities that we need to, the purple communities, the red communities, and we are failing in our message coordination. Every single day, you and I and hundreds of other independent Democratic voices who have significant following should be unified. One unified strategy, like the Republicans do. The only difference is he has it coming out of members of Congress. He has it coming out of his cabinet members. He has it coming out of news organizations and so on. What is our problem? Why are we unable to communicate clearly? Like what I keep saying, just keep hammering home 2 3-word slogans.
Yeah.
Tariffs are taxes. Consumers pay tariffs. When you go to the store and you get your bill and that bill looks like a mortgage payment, you're paying more for less today. So why do we have this inability to communicate clearly, leaving us vulnerable to Republican gerrymandering? Because if we go into this gerrymandering war, they actually win. They win because there are more Republican-controlled states than there are Democratic-controlled states.
Yeah, we're not great at messaging because I think we are always trying to appeal to, one, the better angels of people, and that's not a knock on Democratic messaging. We always feel the need to explain things in, don't take this the wrong way, sometimes densely intellectual ways. Whereas you got Trump, who is the master, as you say, of the 3-word catchphrase, stop the steal, lock her up.
Build the wall.
Yeah, build
Gasoline
the wall.
and groceries.
None of which he did. Think about it. People absorb that message. Build the wall, and Mexico will pay for it. No. Lock her up. No. Stop the steal. Now, he did get people to march on the Capitol and beat the hell out of police officers, but he didn't stop the certification of Joe Biden's win. So Donald Trump, even with his slogans, he's a loser and a loser and a loser, and yet somehow he still comes out with all the power at the end of the day. So, yeah, we're not good at messaging for any number of reasons.
You ever tried launching a podcast with zero experience? Well, let me tell you, it's like being tossed into a cage match with a grizzly bear, blindfolded, wearing clown shoes. I mean, when I started Mea Culpa, I thought to myself, come on, how hard can this be? Well, script writing, logos, production schedules, ad deals, and don't even get me started on the tech setup. I mean, I felt like I was decoding the damn Matrix. If only I had Shopify when I launched this beast. Shopify is the platform behind millions of businesses across the globe, responsible for a whopping 10%, you hear me? 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. And my friends, that's not hype. That's a fact. From big names like Mattel and Gymshark to folks just getting their hustle off the ground, Shopify's got their back. I mean, you want a gorgeous online store? Shopify's got hundreds of sleek, ready-to-go templates that make you look like a design god. And AI tools? Yeah, they've got those too. Writing your product descriptions, jazzing up your images, maybe even making you sound smarter than you actually are. I mean, not naming names or anything, right? I mean, need a marketing squad? Shopify's built-in tools let you hit email, Instagram, TikTok, wherever your customers are scrolling or doom scrolling. And listen, Shopify handles it all. Inventory, returns, international shipping. I mean, they are the ride or die business partner that you never knew that you needed. So if you got a big idea or even a little one and you're ready to turn that dream into a reality, head over to shopify.com/Cohen. So if you want to see less carts being abandoned, it's time for you to head over to Shopify and sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Cohen. That's Shopify, SHOPIFY.com/Cohen. One more time, that's shopify.com/Cohen. Yeah, but that's the whole problem. That's what we actually have to do. So, Glenn, in 60 seconds, tell our audience, what do we need to do as a unified voice right now within which to put out the olive branch to bring these people, again, who are either apathetic or turn around and say, you know what? Fucking Democrats don't do shit. They talk a lot. They proselytize from the podium. At least Trump is out there wrecking things. At least he's doing something. What do we say to them to bring them back in the fold?
One of the things I interviewed Senator Whitehouse a couple of months ago, I said, what do you think we can be doing better? What can we, the people, be doing better, more effectively? He said, every single person has a cell phone. And just as Donald Trump and his flunkies and his lackeys and his lapdogs and his sycophants flood the zone with shit every day, we should be flooding the zone, every one of us, every day, with a short story about how Trump's crimes and corruption and abuses and overreach have injured us, have hurt us, have damaged us, me, you, your friends, your family, your neighbors, your coworkers. And it doesn't matter, he said, if you have 2 followers or 200 followers or 2 million followers, you should be doing that every day, multiple times, and you should be encouraging everyone you know to do it, because they can flood the zone with shit. But if we flood the zone with stories about how we are being harmed by Donald Trump's misconduct, you've got to saturate the public consciousness with that stuff. And then I think we need better, louder, more vocal, more aggressive leaders. I'm not saying just one leader, but we need multiple people to stand up and be those strong, loud, aggressive leaders. I'm not so worried about the gerrymandering numbers at the end of the day. I'm not a mathematician, but I like when Gavin Newsom says, hey, F you, sport. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I am going to stoop even lower than you, and I'm going to kick Texas's ass at its own game. We need to hear that. I think we all know every state in the union is not going to start a gerrymandering war. I think that's very unlikely. And I don't think that prospect should stop us from going hard and punching people in the face, figuratively speaking. Dems are not good at punching people in the face, figuratively speaking.
Yep, we're terrible at it. Well, Glenn Kirschner, thank you so much. Justice matters. We need your voice continuously. And I thank you for joining me, as always, on Mea Culpa. And we're going to have to do our Substack together really, really soon. Let's just keep getting that voice out there, that message out there.
Let's do it. Great being with you, Michael.
Thank you, my brother.